Our game is a 2D scroller with monster enemies, shooting, platforms, spike traps, and collectible items like coins and hearts for additional health. I was involved in the creation of the menus, more specifically making all the images and getting the instruction button to work using a simple J option pane. I created the different frames that pop up when the player dies and when the player beats the game as well, with buttons to exit or play again. I was also responsible for the entire scrolling aspect of the game, which is done through a stationary player drawing and constantly updating the positions of all other drawings for all of the other aspects on the map, such as the background, the platforms, and coins. They move based on the player's x-coordinate movement. This gives off the illusion that the player is moving while it is actually being drawn in the same place the whole time. This is how the entire scrolling system works. I contributed to creating the player, the health system, and the health collectible item to gain more health. I was responsible for the coins, health bar, and the spike traps in the game. All game mammals, which include the player and monsters, have a health value that starts at 100 and goes down in certain situations, such as if the monster collides and attacks the player or the player shoots the monster. I created a health bar that displays player health in the top left. Coins are drawn onto the map, disappear upon player collision, and a counter I made displays how many the player has collected. This amount does not get reset to 0 as the levels go on. I worked on creating maps and the level class as well. Our game has 3 unique level maps that get harder each time. A file I/O system was developed to load each map via 3 different text files for each level. Certain letters on the text file represent different things on the map, such as the letter C for where coins go and the letter S for where spikes go. All map elements are saved onto individual array lists to be drawn into our game. There is a single sign at the end of each level, which means the player has reached the end of the level, and the next level map will draw once the program detects the player has reached and passed the sign. I added a level display to keep track of what level the player is on, and I added the sound effects throughout the entire game as well.
I was involved in making the starting frame and creating the J panel for the background of all the menus. I also was able to create different frames that pop up by disposing the previous frame. This might be when a player dies or wins the game. I was in charge of creating the objects in the game, including things like the player, monster, block, spike, heart, and bullets. I was responsible for the movement on the player and the monster. The player movement includes jumping, moving left and right, and the monster only has jumping and moving left. Jumping is only allowed when the player is not falling and jumping. The player moving left is controlled because the player has to be moving right, because the objective of our game is to reach the final sign. So how much a player moves left is constantly being updated, so there's a boundary in which a player cannot go back. I was also involved in the collision between the classes. This includes making sure that a player and monster can go on and off the block. Through collision detection, the player monster can't walk through the block and jump through or fall through the block. The monster also has a feature that when the monster gets stuck, usually when it's walking straight and intersecting with a block, it performs a jump to get unstuck. Also, collision allows me to check whenever the monster interacts with the player, and the player will take damage. The collision between the player and heart or spike is also simple. Whenever the player hits the heart, it increases the health of the player, while when it intersects with the spike, it damages the player. The player also has a feature that allows him to shoot the monster. Through collision detection, the bullets cannot pass through the block, and when it hits the monster takes damage. I also remove the bullet when it passes a certain distance from the player because bullets can't travel forever.